Welcome to the Sales Career Podcast. This is your host, Kevin Hopp. Whether you're an executive, sales leader, or just getting your career in sales started, I'm here to help you read between the lines and hear the real stories that you can't get from a resume or from a LinkedIn profile, all designed to help you shape your own sales career. Let's dive right into today's episode and see what we can learn. All right, welcome back to the Sales Career Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Hopp. My guest today is Troy Barter. Currently, he's Director of Sales at Hired. But take one look at his LinkedIn profile. You can see that he's a 5-time sales leader, 3-time SaaS sales leader, but more importantly, a 4-time father. Holy cow. Can't imagine being a 4-time dad, being a 1-time dad myself. Everybody, please welcome the great and powerful Troy Barter.
Thanks, Kevin, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Troy, I followed you for a little bit here on LinkedIn, and I noticed a few things, right? One thing that I want to talk about today at some point is Director of Sales. You've been a Director of Sales many, many times, and what that means, is that a VP? Is that an individual contributor? Let's get to that. But first, I think what's really interesting, which is in your LinkedIn headline, which everyone sees, and you've got a nice little LinkedIn following, a good presence on there, you've made some good content. The first thing people see is 5-time sales leader, but 3-time SaaS sales leader. There's a difference there. So what were you doing before you got into SaaS sales, and what made the shift to SaaS sales?
So I guess the question is how far back to go as far as getting into sales, because I mean, it stretched pretty deep back there in the 2000s. I before getting into sales, I was in college to teach. You know, the teachers that were like impactful for me were like my sociology teacher and my history teacher, and I was like, man, I like that stuff, and I really felt like, you know, like they left a mark on me. So like, I'd like to do that too. I'd like to like pay it forward. So I got into school and was definitely struggling to make ends meet. You know, walk into school. You know the old thing. I'm in my late 30s, so like, you know, uphill both ways. Even though you're in Florida, in the snow, you know how hard it was. And I needed some money, and bagging groceries at Albertsons wasn't really popping for me for sure. And I started to sell beats on the side. So I've rapped since I was like 11. And I had a bit of a foothold in Tampa Bay at the time when I lived in Tampa. And I started to just work like through internet channels and everything like that. And I downloaded Fruity Loops. And my boy was a producer who actually ended up producing for like Wu-Tang and Nipsey Hussle and everything like that. And he gave me some pointers, and we're off to the races. Make a couple of these things, and then you reach out to people, and then you realize like, all right, well, you know, back then it was SoundClick.com, not SoundCloud. And it was like, all right, well, what if I went on there and I looked at like every rapper that was in the charts that was on there, these underground guys, there's hundreds of them. Their email is right here. Like I could pull all of their emails. I could start emailing them, telling them that I've got a special going on and everything. And I started to realize like, this is like sales. Like I'm selling something to people, like, you know, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm packing it in. I'm going to sell all of them right now. And it's like fear of loss, going out of business sale and everything. And it's like, man, this is working. But like, if I could do this and I'm making a little bit of extra money, like maybe should look into like trying it as, you know, an actual job. And, the only sale that I knew that existed back then, which by then it was around 2005, 2006, was car sales. Like I just thought that was sales. It was like you sell cars. Like I didn't have the concept that there was anything else that you would sell. So I just went to the local dealership and was like, hey, like, you know, I'd love to get into sales. And I remember telling them like, I need to make at least $3,000 a month. Like to me, then I'll know that I'm a success if I can get to that. And they're like, well, you're probably not going to have a problem with that. And did it in the summertime. Didn't like wildly crush it, but absolutely was on a trajectory to make significantly more than that. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll learn to teach sales down the road, and maybe the sociology thing, when I'm going to be making way more in sales already, maybe that's not the right path for me, because I wanted to earn. You know, once you get into sales and you start seeing some money, it's hard to kiss the game goodbye, man. You know, and was by no stretch a leader when it came to car sales. You know, I didn't really look to get into leadership or anything like that. It was more just grinding it out, man. You know, just on the lot working. From there, I worked at a few different dealerships. I got into door-to-door sales on accident. I thought it was a marketing company, and they acted like it was like this professional thing. You need to wear a suit and tie, and like came in. They're like, "Oh, you look like you could do this. Why don't we take you out for a day in the life? You can shadow one of our reps." And went out and shadowed, and like you kind of realized halfway through the day, like, wait a minute, we're going door to door. We're going. Yeah, it's direct marketing. We're going business to business, selling them FiOS or whatever. And but also like they kind of painted the picture of like you build your team up and you do this and that and you get 5 leaders under you and you could be making hundreds of thousands a year and you can live wherever you want. And I was in Tampa. I wanted to move back up north, but I didn't really have any professional reason to. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can do this. Like I can definitely sell. I already know that I can. Learned quite a bit at that job. I carried it over to door-to-door places that paid more, much more than that. It was kind of like college that first year, and it built great relationships. In fact, some of them I still, work with to this day, and worked at 3 or 4 different business-to-business places. Eventually landed a Verizon contract for a company because of the relationships that I had in outsourced sales, going door to door and business to business. Built out that along with a deregulated electricity, kind of vertical and door to door, where I had roughly 60 to 70 people in my organization. I was a national director of sales. It was markets, I think, in Chicago, Tampa. I think that we had something in Las Vegas as well at the time that was kind of fledgling, that was just starting up. And, it was still kind of a risk. And the reality was like, this did not feel like I was on the cutting edge of where things were going in terms of the market, in terms of sales in general. And a friend of mine who I had worked with at that first door-to-door place, I went and knocked a place that was in Clearwater, and they had a plaque on the wall for top salespeople from like 2 years ago, and I saw his name on it. And it's like a recognizable name, like no one really has his last name. So I took a picture of it and sent it to him. And I was like, hey, man, were you here? He was like, dude, what are you doing right now? Like, I've got, come over here right now. His name's Travis Hulk. And he is an incredible closer, great sales leader as well. Definitely old school. And I love that about him. And it was Fleetmatics, which was that. And he wouldn't let me leave without coming in and signing up. Like he wouldn't without filling out an application and interviewing with the RVP. He wouldn't let me leave.
Was that your first SaaS job? Was Fleetmatics the first SaaS company?
So the rub was, I was a national director of sales. What does that mean? Well, if your team's killing it, it can mean that you might be close to 6 figures. But if your team's not killing it, in Chicago, I mean, you're going door to door in Chicago. You have to have licenses for every different like town, every different county. If you don't have them, you get arrested, you get kicked out. You got to deal with different vans that you're pulling people in from downtown to move out to, wherever they happen to be at that day. It was a pain, man. And there was a lot of variables that could result in you not getting paid outside of just doing your job right. And I looked at it like, man, I would start here. They didn't have an AE role when I started. I'd be an SDR. I'd be coming in from the ground up. But I mean, this was a legitimate path to multiple 6 figures. And I didn't feel like I really had that legitimate path in door to door in spite of all the success that I had. So I was like, man, let's do it. I'm down to roll my sleeves up and cold call and get after it. So yeah, that was the first SaaS role that I took, man, was Fleetmatics. That's how I got started.
I love it. So, man, you went from being the door pulling king to having a colleague kind of pull you into the SaaS world there. So that transition from, talk to me a little bit about the transition from selling non-SaaS products to selling SaaS. I'm sure there's a lot of people that might listen to this that are intimidated by that. They think that, well, I don't know a lot about computers. Well, I'm not like super tech savvy. Is there a large difference in the job and in the skill set required?
No, there's not. I'm not tech savvy. I'm beyond not tech savvy. I've never been a master of the product of anything that I've ever sold. I master the process for sure, though, and refine it and use it and work it to my advantage. But the best examples, I'm doing this on an iMac that I've probably had since 2015, and I started actually using it 2 years ago because I figured out you could get one of these that has the right click on the mouse instead of theirs. Before that, I would just be on Chrome or whatever, because it's the only thing I could figure out on the iMac that's like a freaking $3,000 computer. Like I couldn't figure out how to right click, and I'm a software sales leader. It just wasn't for me. Like, yeah, you can think that it's a daunting task. Like the daunting part is like, it's breaking in. And the toughest thing is like, I'll have people reach out to me and be like, dude, like I'm ready to move into an AE role. I sold real estate. I crushed it in real estate. I want to get into software. And it's like, dude, like you may find a place that will roll the dice on you. But if you go in as an SDR now, you're all but guaranteed to be an AE in a year. And the question is, do you want to take that step back to take a step forward? And it's very difficult. Like in my position, like I know they look at it, and you might even see sales leaders on like LinkedIn that say like, well, that's a foolish outlook for me to have, to not roll the dice on them and bring them in as an AE. To me, I've got SDRs right now that are on their grind. There is no dice roll if I promote them to AE. I know their attitude. I know if they're a fit. I know they know the product. I know they know the prospects that they're going after. I already got them. Why, they already did the work. Why would I not give them the opportunity instead of someone that's just coming in? And I did that. I went from director to SDR, so it's really like, it's not that daunting to pick the phone up and call if you've been in sales before. It's daunting if you're going to leap right into an AE role, but I don't think that you should. I think that what I learned as an SDR, and I wasn't an SDR for long. I was a pure SDR for maybe a month and a half. And then the company had a mass exodus and they needed me for an AE. And luckily, part of sales and relationship building, my manager already knew that I was the man from 2008. So here we are in 2013, and he's like, this guy's mopping the floor with the SDRs already in a month and a half, and I know he can close. So, like, what are we talking about? And it was real easy for me to make that transition into it.
Yeah.
But learning the software is, if you're at the right place, the software shouldn't be that tough anyways. Difficult software, as far as onboarding, as far as learning, means that you're going to have a difficult sales process. It means that when you go to onboard somebody, there's a million things that can go wrong that result in you getting a deal unwound. It also means that there's a large chance that if it's not an enterprise offering, that the product market fit's not going to be there for there to be enough of a market for it to make sense for you to scale a big sales order, for you to progress your career there. I look for something that's got a lot of ease of use on it. It kills kind of every bird with one stone. It's easy for me because I'm not a genius at tech stuff, but it's also easy to sell, so it's just looking for those opportunities and stop being picky would be the big thing that I would say is like, do you really want to break into software? And if the answer is yes, then all right, then be an SDR. Like get in there and actually do it. Like if you don't, then how bad do you really want it? Right? If you want to if you want to own a McDonald's, they're not going to let you walk in there and buy a McDonald's. You got to know everything from the ground up. Like that's part of the game. Like it's the exact same thing when it comes to SaaS, or at least it should be, where if you learn how to be an SDR, you're going to be a better AE because of it. And if not, when you're an AE, you're going to be a giant pain in the ass because you're not going to respect what that SDR is doing. You're going to hurt that relationship pretty quickly. And you're probably not going to close as well as you could. And what happens if the SDRs stop producing? What happens if the inbounds dry up and now you can't cold call because you never learned how to do it? Like, there's a million reasons why. Like, it's not that daunting. What's daunting is having to take that step back and kind of humble yourself and get started as an SDR instead of trying to be an AE or a leader right off the bat.
Right. You touched on so many awesome points there. First off, you were pretty fortunate to be in a position where you only had to be an SDR for like 2 months. But what I think is important to take away is you were your own SDR for years ahead of that. Yeah. Right? If you're knocking doors, you don't have an SDR setting up stuff for maybe someone was setting up appointments for you at some point, and then you have people below you setting up appointments, things like that.
I never had an appointment beforehand.
That raw skill.
Yep. Right? And it's this is how I look at it is like. They didn't like make me an AE on accident. I ragdolled everybody in 1 month. Like we had a floor of probably 30 SDRs. And like the way that I always say it is, and this is the big thing that I always kind of tell people is like any place that you work at, really be a sponge and learn everything and don't forget it, write it down and be ready to apply it at the next place. Cause you'd be shocked at how much of it applies when you come to the next spot. So the way I always relate to it is if you ever seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire?
Yes.
So in that movie, it's, a guy that is wildly, underprivileged dude, is dead broke. He ends up on How to Be a Millionaire, and he gets on there and they start asking questions, and like, it's dumb luck that every question that they ask him, he already had a life experience that perfectly applies where he happened to know the answer based on the things that he learned in his life, weird situations and everything. And when I sat down at Fleetmatics and they broke down the script, it felt exactly like that. Like where they get to the end and, it's like, hey, my name's Troy. I've been working with so-and-so over at ABC Plumbing in the area. All right, cool. Well, that's Sidcore. That's Jones effect. You're leveraging social proof to lower the skepticism on a cold call so you can build impulse. I've been helping them out with this, and this. All right, so it's just a quick short story, elevator pitch type of thing. And I believe that you have 5 or more vehicles over there. Is that right? All right, cool. That's the same thing that I did as well. You're asking a qualifying question that you kind of care about but kind of don't. And the whole purpose of that is just so you don't steamroll them when you're about to go for the close, because you're about to go for the close next. And they say, yes, all right, cool. What I normally do is just schedule a short online demonstration, show you live fleet in the area, use all of our live maps, reporting tools, everything we can customize for you. When's the best time for you to take a look at something like that? Would later today work for you? Or do you think tomorrow's going to be better for that? So that's where they had the key in their script, but no one had identified it. They had an option close. They had a beautiful option close that worked, but no one knew how to position it. In the car business, it was, hey, we've got 3 payments for you. We have 36 months. This one has the lowest interest rate. So if what you care about is the duration of the entire loan, paying the least amount, you pay the least amount here, but it's 36 months. So it's going to be a higher monthly payment. So if budget matters to you a little bit more, but you still want to save a bit, as far as the long term, we can do 48 months. It's this interest rate. It's kind of in between. Or we can do 72 months. Interest rate is higher, but your monthly expenses are going to be lower. Which one of these do you think would make the most sense for you? Oh, well, 72 months. All right, cool. Just sign right here. I'll go get it approved. There was no option for you to say no. We used to call it eliminating option 0. When I sold door-to-door alarms, I believe, is that right behind you, Kevin? Is that like the touchpad for the alarms back there? And you open the door and it's like, all right, cool. I just got to take a look at that real quick. Do you want me to take my shoes off? That's a yes or no question, but either way, I'm coming in the house, man. Like we're about to talk business. Like there's no option for me to not go in there. So there was a benefit or like an advantage that I had from only having to be an SDR for a month and a half, but not really, because anyone else that would have known him would have came in. And if they didn't become a student to the game when it comes to sales, really learn their stuff and apply it elsewhere and not forget it. That's the big thing. People learn stuff, but then they forget it after 2 jobs. Like, I'm ready to pluck that stuff, dude. Like, I keep it in ready to go. And because of that, I could go in and they didn't know the option close. So I was just whipping because they would just say, would today or tomorrow work for you? They lumped it together. It was a yes or no question. Like, you got to slow it down, fam. When's the best time for you to take a look at something like this? Will later today work for you? Or do you think tomorrow's going to be better for that? There is no option for no. And if they said that those don't work, I widen the funnel. All right, cool. Would later this week work, or do you think next week's going to work? Like, because I had that, it was already in their script. They just didn't know how to do it. They didn't teach towards it. They must have found it somewhere and didn't understand the mechanics. It gave me an unfair advantage. And then it allowed me to be able to teach people what I was doing, and it was repeatable. So then you had other people that, as long as they were willing to listen to someone who had only been there for 2 weeks, that they would also start to have success. And it became, pretty easy for me to get into like the top 2 or 3 after a month. And that's not after a month of training. I started July 3rd, 2013, and I was 2nd or 3rd at the end of July. We didn't have training. They gave you the script and told you to practice it. Like, that was it, so.
Right.
Yeah, I think if looking back, it is easy to be like, all right, there was good fortune here. There was good fortune on this thing. But the reality is, like, if you're not prepared for that good fortune and to take advantage of it, you'll never get it. And if you look at somebody who may have had it and say, oh, well, that's why, then you're never going to learn how they actually did it. Because that's how I actually did it, and I think that's, it's an important lesson, man, for sure.
For sure. And it reminds me of a saying that I learned when I was in high school. And that's opportunity looks a lot like hard work, right? Yes. So, you become an overnight success 5 years in the making, right? So sort of like that. Awesome. So you were at Fleetmatics for a while there, and you got acquired by one of the biggest companies in the world. Verizon's one of the biggest companies in the United States. What was that like? You know, a lot of people listening to this have never been through an acquisition with a big company. Was that a fun experience, do you think, as a salesperson, or was that kind of the reason that you left?
It's the reason I left. But like, is it a fun experience? Well, it depends on what you would call fun. Does every share turning into $60 fun if you have stock? Yeah, it's a lot of fun, you know. But now you have invested fully. You've only invested 25%, let's say, or something like that. So you got another 3 years or so where you're investing, and you're no longer in startup mode, or you're no longer, you know, this sales org that was just outstanding in the way that they held firm to their process. We don't deviate. Our deals come in within 48 hours. If not, we send them a breakup email. That's that. I don't care the size of the deal. We don't deviate. That's how it was there. And it was a process that borderline, yeah, you would lose a couple of deals there, but man, people were so firm on what they were presenting that they ended up getting a lot more than they lost. And that culture is just not a culture that's going to be sustainable when you get bought by a Verizon. You know, It was cool. You see, you see the founders of the company and everything like that. They go public. Then you see, man, $2.4 billion is no joke whatsoever. But Fleetmatics, their whole mantra was like, we're in a hurry. And like, the best way I could put it, man, is there's a VP over there that's in Europe, and I won't say his name, but it's probably not hard to look up. He's probably still there. Irish guy, he's awesome. And he was there at Fleetmatics. Dude was an absolute G. And he was in there, now a high level VP at Verizon Connect in sales, and everyone's saying, oh, I think it's Simsera. Oh, this company Simsera, every time we run into them, they keep beating us. Like they got better prices. People like their product better. And he just was everyone kept saying it in this round table. It's actually my last day, funny enough. And he eventually got to talk, and he was like, guys, when this was Fleetmatics a few years ago, we would never be saying that this product is going to beat us. We'd say that it's dog crap, and we'd find a way to beat them. Like, you guys are laying down. You're deciding that you're going to lose ahead of time. You picked your excuse and you're running with it. You're going to let them beat you? Like, that was that heart and soul mindset. And man, when you scale 3-4 times the size, and it's a Verizon environment, and they bought 2 other companies and they're all meshed together, it's hard to keep that vibe going, man. It really is. That was not fun. It really wasn't. Like, there's a million things I can tell you that were cool. Like, they'd pay for college. You want to go back and that degree right back there was from, getting an associate's, which isn't, by any stretch fancy, but it was free, where I got back and was able to complete something from years and years ago. There were some things on the comp side that, weren't the worst. The facility that we worked out of was awesome. There's a million things that were pretty cool, but in general, different strokes for different folks, but I like to build, man. And I like to get my hands dirty, and I like to get in there and get after it. And it just doesn't jive that well with an enormous conglomerate.
Exactly. And you're hitting on something that is so critical to your day-to-day as a salesperson. But I feel like a lot of people, when they're looking for their next job, might sort of overlook this idea of culture, right? Like, the culture of the organization that you're joining, and the sales culture in particular, is super important, right? And in my own career, I was working at a tech startup in downtown San Diego, and we were having all sorts of product market fit issues at the time. And, my VP sat me down and literally said, hey, the product's not where it needs to go for you to make money, for you to get commission, but we're really confident that it will be there in 6 months. And he basically said, sit tight. We'll get some account management for you to do, and this and that. And that same week, apropos, just the universe, a recruiter from a big company called Vonage calls me and says, hey, do you want to make $15K more base and work from home? I was like, what? Yeah, I do. Yep. Right. But I didn't do any real research into telecom and Vonage as a company. Woo, 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 woo. I was like, oh, I know Vonage. It's a home phone company. My parents used to have Vonage. Yep. But now they're selling business phone systems. So in the same way that you love that that startup building culture. I love that about startups. I worked at a few different startups in a row. My first job out of college, I was the first hire at a startup, and it's kind of been a trend in my career. I'm a big builder guy. That's like what I do. And Hop Consulting, that's what I do now. I help people build sales culture from the ground up. Most people I work with don't have any SDRs, and they have a team after I leave. Like, that's the whole thing. But I found the same sort of thing working for a big company. It's like, well, sure, we could do some rah-rah stuff. Sure, the benefits were great. Sure, I got to work from home, which I still do to this day, which is great. It got me going on that. It was the last time I was ever in an office. It was right before that. But that big company culture is just something that you got to know if that's for you or not, right? And, if anyone's listening that's in that scenario where they're like, do I go take the big attractive offer with a big company? How important is culture to you, right? That small team mindset of like, it's us against the world, right? Because that's what's really, really fun, especially if you're going into the office, right? Because you mentioned you were in the office. When I was an SDR at a company called Mind Touch here in San Diego, we had an awesome culture. We had a pit. And the pit was so fun, right? It was all men except for one female, and she actually dominated. She did better than we did. Yep. She was the top rep.
For sure.
And we were all chasing her. And, of course, what tends to happen, she's a top female SDR. And then she ended up having a career in customer success, and she's awesome at kicking all sorts of butt. But it's been ironic to see that she didn't stay in sales. And we were all like trying to like grow our sales career and thinking that like being a great SDR was going to lead to being a great salesperson. Maybe not the case directly there. So, next question for you here, Troy. I see director of sales here many, many times, and I struggle to find other LinkedIn profiles where they're director of sales for so many years consistently. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, is it just a title, or does it mean the same thing? Are you doing the same sort of responsibilities? Is this like a role that you find yourself really like cherishing? Because you've done it for, between Fleetmatics, Panda, and Hired, 6-7 years.
Yeah, I say I've been a director since GTA 4 was out, which about right at this point. Pretty fun. Dude, we can kind of keep it a buck, man. Like, who wants to be in the same title for their entire career? Like, nobody does. Like, my whole thought is like, I'm not trying to be like a sales guy. I'm trying to be the sales guy. I hear Grant Cardone. I'm like, man, my shit's more John Blaze than that. I could do that. I could easily do that, like I can motivate people better. I feel like I've got better content. I feel like, and how far do people listen when that's your title? Well, it can be pretty far, to be fair. If you look at I think it's Sarah Brazier, who is from Gong. She was an SDR, absolutely mopping the floor with other top voices, so it is doable. It wasn't a part of my goals though. Like, my goal is to get beyond this. It hasn't happened. I feel like I've performed everywhere that I'm at. And I think the reality is I couldn't tell you why with confidence. I think a part of it that, looking back, that could be it is I'm maybe too willing sometimes to get my hands dirty. I'm someone who, if a report can't get made this week by RevOps, I'll make it myself. That dashboard can't get made, I'll do it myself. And if you are always doing it yourself, are they going to look to you as the person that can run an org that's full of leaders where you have to delegate? Maybe not. It's a possible there. I'm a pretty old school sales guy, and my thought is a lot of the new stuff that people try to come out with is like, ooh, we could try this now. Cold calling's dead. It's not dead. You're just a dork. You just don't have the charisma to get on the phone. You don't have the heart to dial 300 times in the day. If they don't answer, it still works. You just don't want to hear that it works. So you found little facts and little things that might not be facts to create confirmation bias that works for what works for you, so you can live in a world where you wouldn't get to live 30 years ago. That's how I look at it. I think a lot of stuff's not broke. And because of that, I think that, who knows, maybe it's abrasive. Maybe when they're looking for that new, fresh idea, and I say the idea is execution. That's the idea. The idea is executing on what already works and working on that. How much time you spend with these reps on tonality, on sounding like they're actually a person that cares instead of just reading a script. What have you worked on with that? Like, who knows? I honestly don't know the answer. I'd say what it comes down to is a large thing that you mentioned is culture on where you're going. You want to verify that. Don't take it. Number one, always take every call. If someone asks to have a conversation with you, that people say interview once a year. No, I don't think so, man. I think if someone reaches out to you and it even makes vague sense, interview every time. Talk to them every time. It's going to keep you fresh. You never know when the perfect opportunity for you is going to come up. You might be at the second perfect one, but the most perfect one might be that one call, and you may never find out about it. And I'd say that, and don't be desperate to leap from one place to the next. Really vet them. There's a few different ways where things might look perfect, and they are absolutely not. Some would be like, oh, our culture we're a sales culture. We're going to give you this. And you're like, oh, wow, that's like 50 grand over my OTE right now. And then you get in there and you realize that the target is twice as high as what everyone's performing at. And you might be able to get them to 1.5x that, but it's 2 times by design because they ain't trying to pay you that OTE that they offered you. It's on purpose. They got you in the door now. You already quit that other place. Now you're stuck, type of thing. On the flip side, hey, no, that's not the case here. We're killing it. We're tripling our target. It's ridiculous how high we're doing, how we're overperforming. Fantastic. No, not yet. That'll mean shit, because you could go in there and find the exact opposite, where you're realizing that it's 3x and you could take it to 6x. Easy. Ain't nobody trying to hear any advice that you've got. They're 3xing their number. They're not going to listen to you. You're a glorified babysitter now. You better be ready to just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. So if you're there to make an impact, you're not going to be able to make an impact. And if you want to, you better wait a year. You better build rapport. You better kiss some butt, and you got to wait. I'm in a hurry guy. That's what Fleetmatic's ingrained in me. I ain't changing it. I'm not going to change. I'm going to keep with what worked for me. So when I'm at a place that I see something that needs to be fixed, I better have some adults with me that are ready to fix it, because if not, one of us is bouncing. And that's just the way it is, dude. Sorry. And I'll die on that hill. That's how I feel about it. But you want to vet that culture. And also, one thing might look fantastic, but you got to dig deeper. You got to do a better discovery when you're interviewing than you would when you're with a prospect. So when they say, oh, we're going to give you a higher OTE. All right, well, why? How are you hitting it? What are you doing right now? What's your process like? Can I talk to a couple of account executives and see how they feel? Ask them some questions that might get them a little bit comfortable to maybe tell you the facts. When you start talking to them, build a little rapport before you actually get in there. Or if it's like, hey, we're crushing our target. All right, cool. What's that mean? Does every AE think that they are absolutely at the mountaintop? They're at the top of Everest. There's nowhere else for them to go. You've got nothing for them. Just stay. Don't even just stay out of the way. Just don't even be there. That might be the case. You got to dig deeper, and that's as a leader, but even as a salesperson, it's the exact same thing. Always be open to an opportunity, but man, vet it for culture. Vet it hard for culture. And if you have any inclination that it might not be right, you're probably right. And just wait, because there's going to be more opportunities that are going to come. We're in a hot market right now, but it's always the case. There's always something else right around the corner. So don't leap into something. Don't get married until you know that it's time.
That's a very good piece of advice. Don't get married until you know it's time.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I was applying for an enterprise sales role a few years ago, and I treated it like an enterprise sale. And that got it was incredible how much the CEO recognized that, because what I did was I applied through someone that I knew that was working at this company. So I already knew him, but he was like an AE, and this was like an enterprise AE role, and I was trying to get that job. So I applied through him. He put the thing on the COO's desk. COO calls me. We have our phone screen. After the phone screen, I went and added the 3 other people who work in sales, or 4 other people that were working in sales at the time, on LinkedIn, and I DM'd all of them. I got into conversations with them and got on the phone with one of them. And then I have the in-person interview. Before meeting the COO, I meet with before meeting the CEO, I meet the COO, and he tells me about the head of product. Now, the head of product's like this visionary guy and all this stuff. So what do? I reach out to the head of product. So by the time I sat down with the CEO, he said, everyone on my team is talking about you. And I haven't met you yet. But how is everybody on my team already talking about you? I said, wouldn't you want your sales process to go the same way? by the time you get to the decision maker, they say, everybody on my team is talking about how great your solution is.
Yep.
And I haven't even sat down with the salesperson. So interesting anecdote. Like I think the idea that some salespeople out there tend to say, poor me, like you see people putting the open to work thing and being out of work for months at a time. Like salespeople should never be on unemployment is my hot take, right? Like ever. Like it's sales.
Yeah.
Like don't let yourself go on unemployment. Like I would never let myself go on unemployment. I would go find a sales job. How? I'm a seller. I'm a hunter. I'm a cold caller. The other fun story about this is the day I signed my mortgage, $500,000 California mortgage. Maybe I'm sharing too much, but like it was a big mortgage with my wife and I, fiance at the time. The day I signed the mortgage, that afternoon I got fired. Big panic, right? Like that's like we talk about kind of hard to swallow pills. We talk about like tough moments in your life, right? That was pretty ridiculous. And what I did was the next day I woke up and I cold called 4 CEOs of companies that were hiring for sales in San Diego. And that's actually one of the times that I got delegated to the COO and that whole enterprise sales story, right? And I had a new job, a new gig within a week, like very, very quickly. But it's the nature of knowing that, hey, look, I know how to bring things to market. I know how to find solutions. I know how to go out there and get it. So as a salesperson, you should always be leveraging that natural talent. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. You're not just trying to sell other people's stuff. You got to sell yourself first, right? And find the right opportunity for you.
You like a big thing, and I brought this up a few different times. So it's funny that you say that. I brought it up recently. When you're in the interview process, if you get the inkling that you really want it, like be on to go the extra mile. Don't just do what they're asking of you. Like go way past that. An easy one. Right. I did this at Hired. Is you go in. Let's say they have a LinkedIn posting for the job. It's got to have every bullet point on there of what they're looking for. All right. So you take those bullet points and then you put them into a Word document or whatever Google Word document, and you add a bullet point underneath each one of them, and you answer every one based on your experience and how this would relate to you and how well you could handle that, and send it over to the person that you're interviewing with beforehand. Say, hey, I know that our time is brief. I wanted to make sure that you had this stuff ahead of time. Hopefully this helps. Another thing that is actually really helpful is doing podcasts. You do a podcast, you can say, hey, I know that our time is going to be brief. We only have a half hour scheduled. Here's a podcast that I did that kind of shows my philosophy on everything. And it's a lot of extra that you would not have been able to ever get with them that is in front of them now. They get to know you way better than they ever would have on there. And they also see that you're willing to put yourself out there and that you're doing things, you're being proactive. There's a million different ways you can do it, but similar, like, I'm sure it didn't say in the job description, hey, treat us like an enterprise deal and multi-thread into everybody. Like it wasn't. It was just you wanted it more than everybody else. And I will say this, I will take want it more over any level of skill or accomplishment every time. In fact, when I do interviews, and I bet almost everyone would say, man, you're an idiot for doing this. I talk most of the time when it's an SDR, which sounds ridiculous, and it probably is. But here's what I'm looking for. I'm going to sell you on the opportunity here. Do you look like you're ready to run through a wall when I'm talking to you? If the answer is yes, and then when I'm done talking, you sound hyped. I can hear it in your voice. You're selling you're selling yourself on me, and you're ready to go. I can see it. I can see a visceral reaction to how I like to motivate. All right, cool. That's what I'm looking for. I will take that over the guy that's telling me that they've got 3 years of over 100% of target, but they're asking me what I can do for them. I'm more interested in you. That's what I'm looking for, especially at the SDR level, but really in general. I'm like that. That's maybe it's foolish because that's how I am. Like I'm easily hyped up and I look for motivation every day, and like that's kind of me. But I got to manage them. So they got to at least some way be someone that I can motivate.
100%. I mean, I do a similar thing, by the way, when I interview SDRs. When I interview SDRs, I ask them about themselves and some like personal questions and just hear how they tell their own story. And if they don't have a good vibe and an excitement in the way they tell their own story and the way they talk about their future, then I know that it's going to be really hard to coach them to get excited about whatever software product we're going to sell, right? There's so much of the intangibles that you got to look for if you're looking for someone who's going to be on the phones.
It's like, do they look at it like this is a telemarketing job, or do they look at it like I'm a stone's throw from like a job that's on par with a doctor in terms of compensation? And if they see it that way and they see like, oh, I'm right there, I'm going to do anything to get there, like, then that's who you're looking for. And if it's like, no, I actually don't have to have that attitude anymore. I've got a couple of years of experience. I'm going to actually interview you instead. Was it like on Step Brothers? Didn't they do that? How much do you make a year? Let's turn the tables on this. Like, it's like, all right, cool. Like, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate it more at the AE level. But even those AEs, I don't want to work with them, man. I actually don't. I don't want to ever work with them. I want to work with people that are fucking pumped for the opportunity. Part of my language, man. But like, I want people that are wildly excited about it, where they're like, dude, like, this is the best ever. Like, where it's like people are excited about Friday, and you're like, you're excited about Friday? Like, yeah, I guess it's going to be cool, but man, I'm really having fun. I'm having fun here too. Like, I'm not pumped because of the weekend. Like, weekend's going to be cool too, but I'm pretty pumped about Monday. Like, that's what I'm looking for, man. And I think it's fair to have a little bit of both, but I think it's a little unfair for us to not look for those people that have that attitude as well, because if they exist, like, is that not a value? And they do exist. You know, they've gone through it harder. They appreciate the opportunity differently. They're at that right time where it makes sense to them and they value it more. You know, that's, you know, when you're interviewing, don't be afraid to show your passion, like, and really sell yourself, you know, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to separate you from most other people that interview that are worried about coming off perfectly professional. I'd rather you get a little pumped in there. Like, you know, we're talking sales here, you know, like there's a thrill involved.
I love it. And anyone who's listening here, I'm sure Hired is hiring. Is Hired hiring right now?
We are. We're hiring for AEs.
Of course you're hiring. If you got excited at all listening to Troy talk, because I'm excited over here. You know, my heart rate's up. Like, reach out to Troy. Like, this is someone with energy, and this is rare, right? Like, I respect the hell out of you, Troy. This is awesome.
I'll say this too, man. Like, we're hiring for AEs, we're hiring for SDRs. Like, we're probably going to continue to be hiring. I mean, we're scaling, we're killing it on that side. But also, like, if you want advice, like, I've got time. Like, I've never turned down a half-hour conversation to help mentor somebody or give them a different spin on something. You know, I said it on the last podcast I was on with Rob Jetson. It's a Warren Sapp quote that I really like that he said on Howard Stern, where he's like, they pay me to practice. I'll play the game for free. I'll talk sales with somebody for free. Every time. I could do it all day. It's my life's passion, man. Like, that's what I love. You know, you got to pay me to go in and you know, have an HR conversation. You know, you got to pay me to, like, do another meeting where I'm presenting the same numbers that I did in 3 other meetings, which every place does, you know. So, but that's the busy work is the stuff that is the cost. I do the sales part for free. So, like, genuinely, like, anybody, like, don't be bashful. Like, hit me up if you want to put time on my calendar. I'll make time for you. You know, like, I'm always down to help.
I love it. I love it. Well, on that note, Troy, let's wrap things up. I want to ask you the same 3 questions that I ask everybody. So the first question is, what's the biggest commission check you've ever gotten?
Is it a check from sales or a check from commission? Commission check, I think. So I'll give you 2, right? Sure. And I like that because a lot of people probably wouldn't say it. So a commission check, I want to say, was somewhere around 17 grand. I think somewhere around there. And I was still kind of struggling when I got it. And on that one, like, I paid off quite a bit and kind of fixed my credit off of one thing and had money left over for a Breitling. So it wasn't bad. And to save up a bit. Largest check that I ever got, and I think it's important that no one really talks about this, was from stock. In a day, I made at Fleetmatics off of stock. I happen to have a couple things vest. I made 100 grand in a day. And the other one's pretty fresh. So I'll say elsewhere, I made 189 grand in a day. So ask for stock when you're working at a startup is the long story short. If you want FU money, that's the way to do it. 100%, I remember at the last place I was at, I would tell them that Fleetmatic story about making that 6 figures in a day and saying like, guys, like you don't understand, like we could be doing this here. Lo and behold, year and a half later, unicorn company. And, here we are. It happened again, and,
exciting.
Yeah, it's doable if you're at a startup, get stock. That's the beauty when you said like you've been like employee number 5 and everything like that. You want to make millions and millions and millions in sales. You gotta have the chutzpah to take that risk, because that's how you actually make that money. And the risk might not pay off the first time. I always say people only have so many runs in them, and then it's like, man, I'm torched, can't do it no more. And the next one might be the one that hits. So you gotta keep plugging along for sure.
I love that. Yeah, it's actually something we covered with when I talked to Ryan Reiser in episode 2. He was talking about how that that similar thing where the biggest check he ever got was from an acquisition. It wasn't commission. So play the equity game. It's super important. Cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's inspiring, to be sure. So the next question is, sales or not, what's been your favorite job you've ever had?
Somebody asked me that earlier today too.
Really?
I really think at its heyday it was Fleetmatics. I really do. I think I'm adaptable and I can do other things, but man, did I love a boiler room. I really did. I really love that just gritty Braveheart speech and get out there, while out on the phones, 15 coffees. Like we're here for a good time, not a long time sale. Like I loved it, man. Like it took me back to the car days. It took me back to a lot. And, I think it's a shame that that's been kind of equated to like bro culture, I guess. And then everyone's like, well, that's dead now. It's like, why does anything have to be dead? Why can't everything be alive? How about that? Like, well, there's this culture here. And here, there happens to be this culture, by the way. Maybe people like that over there. There used to be a time, and it's sounding like an old man, like where you're worried about, like, conforming was on like the other side. Everyone wanted you to conform. That was like the suits and everybody, right? Like the old men were like, you need to conform. And now it feels like it's almost the flip side. Like, it's somebody else altogether now that's in college that's saying, no, everybody has to do everything the same way. I think that's not a fun way to go through life. Like everyone should be able to pick and choose. Nothing should die. What's toxic to you isn't to a group of 60 other people. You don't know. I think it's being open to that and celebrating all of it that I think creates the most fulfilling work environment for the most amount of people. I think making everybody try to be the exact same thing is disastrous. Like you're missing out on a lot of fun. It's my hot take.
I love it. Cold calling's not dead. No model is dead. It's just different, right? Like one of the things that I preach in my consulting is you can still have a really energetic sales culture. You just have to use like the remote tools really well. You got to turn your camera on, things like that. Like what will kill culture really quickly is the dial into the call, have the phone in the corner, be on your, laptop, with your feet kicked up, wearing pajamas during a selling day. Like that will kill culture. But the idea that you don't need the energy anymore to sell and there's no boiler room, like you can have an upbeat culture. Turn your camera on is a big little tip for everybody there. Okay, last question here. If you didn't have to worry about money, if money wasn't a thing, what would you do with your time?
I was thinking about that. Powerball's pretty high and everything like that. We don't have time for me to really expand on it, obviously. But, I'd probably continue to advise on sales and try to help people and be willing to mentor and pay it forward. But I was saying this to my wife, like, probably battle rap again, really, for some kicks here and there. I was kind of a name for a bit on King of the Dot and Grind Time back in the day, and I kind of built myself up nicely. And it's not really something that you want to do while being like a borderline executive nowadays. It's not the most fruitful endeavor. Works for a couple people that are friends of mine. Real deal is the King of the Dot champ is a teacher. Everyone knows he's a teacher. I mean, he's not canceled. He's making it work, but Yeah, if I completely had free autonomy, I would do that at least once in a while. It is there is no rush quite like somebody screaming at you and embarrassing you for 2 minutes, and then you got to turn it around in a crowd of 300 people. And there's a different rush to that than landing a sale for sure.
Yeah. Wow. No, and that is an awesome little nugget that I hope people realize, that Troy Barter, the director of sales, this awesome LinkedIn personality, you were a battle rapper and you were selling beats back in the day. Like that is really cool. It's one thing that I don't think folks would know from the outside looking in, right? Like that.
Yeah, I tried not to bring it up, but I just figured through it. Like, yeah, it's yeah, man. I mean, I think that it's a big part of what's made me who I am, for sure. Definitely on the personality side and the public speaking side, it's a game changer for me getting into it and putting myself out there.
Awesome. All right. Well, Troy, thanks for sharing so much with me. I really do appreciate it. And where can people find you? Is LinkedIn the best way to connect with you?
It definitely is. Like, I've got Instagram and stuff, but I don't really update it enough. LinkedIn, just search Troy Barter. You'll find me. I accept everyone that adds me. You add me, you reach out, say, hey, listen to this. I want to talk to you for 30 minutes. I got a question for you. I guarantee that I'm going to make time for you. I genuinely don't care how many people reach out to me. Like, I always make time. So just let me know.
I love it. We're going to put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes here. And Troy, thank you once again. I do appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your week here, man.
Yep. Same to you, man. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
If this episode is interesting to you, please share your thoughts on LinkedIn or Twitter. Tag me, and I might just feature your post in an upcoming episode of the Sales Career Podcast. Or if you want to connect directly, go to hopconsultinggroup.com and we'll find a way to work together. Cheers.